Yeah, so today presentation about Near actually will be a little bit different from like normal presentations we do. They tend to be like super technical. This presentation will actually focus on like overall what we've done in the last 14 months. We're like fairly young project, bunch of kind of like blockchain newbies, relatively speaking. And I'm gonna also, for the first time, kind of like ever share more color on our go-to-market like initiatives, because I've been doing this for a while, but we haven't been like publishing any of this. So myself, I immigrated to US from Eastern Europe on my own. Kind of put myself through the school, worked a bunch of years for like 100 hours a week. Worked in finance a little bit, so we sold like Motorola to Google and Tumblr to Yahoo when I was there. Didn't really enjoy fully working in finance, and I actually decided to quit and start my own startup. That didn't work out. I blew through all of my savings. But then worked on actually sales and marketing for different kinds of companies. So I worked in MuleSoft, pre-IPO, it was a middleware company. Was there when they grew from 600 people to 1,200 people. Then I left actually and joined MemSQL, which was 10 times smaller company. It's a company out of San Francisco building sharded databases used by a bunch of large evil corporations in US, like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Comcast, Akamai, Uber. Everyone kind of like uses MemSQL, very complex piece of technology, deals with streaming millions of transactions per second into your database, while at the same time doing SQL analysis on top of this data. So it's basically convergent transactional database and analytical database, very complex piece of technology. And why it's important is because Near consists of a bunch of people from MemSQL. So the first employee of MemSQL is a co-founder of Near. I was working there. Another 3 people who built sharded database over there are at Near. And so we started Near last summer, kind of thinking that, naively thinking that scaling is the most important kind of like thing in a blockchain space. And so our team is kind of experienced and therefore stunned to really like solve this problem. Very quickly realized that it's kind of like secondary problem actually, and there are bigger problems associated with usability and getting people to the blockchain space, which is not that crowded today. And so Near, in a nutshell, is a team of bunch of ICPC medalists. It's intercollegiate competitive programming. Majority of our team is engineers still. We started in San Francisco. We're starting to kind of like decentralize a lot more now that our kind of like spec for what we're building is actually a lot more finalized. And so we're starting to hire people in Germany, in Eastern Europe, in New York City. Initially, team was just all in San Francisco. We raised some funding as well from mainly crypto-focused VCs, mainly in Silicon Valley so far. Another thing to note, we have 9 ex-founders in our team. So a bunch of people on the team outside of the founding team thinks as if they are founders and kind of like working nonstop and have a lot of like kind of like extreme ownership mentality. It's a pretty good team. And so what we focus on so far in the last 14 months. So on the tech side of things, we focus on 3 things. It's development experience, it's usability of blockchain applications, and then scalability as well. On the go-to-market, we focus on a bunch of outbound and inbound hand-to-hand combat, and I'm gonna have slides on each one of those things and go into detail, as well as inbound recently. And so that was like really exciting that we opened up also inbound funnel and starting to accept a bunch of projects into a Near ecosystem. And then when it comes to users, it will all come down to token distribution over long term. And so it will be a big kind of initiative for us for 2020 and 2021. We're going to launch mainnet at the end of this year, and company will shift the focus towards go-to-market. So I'll cover slide by slide what we mean by this, all of these areas of focus. So development experience, we think that in order for blockchain really come in a big way and decentralize the web at scale, we need to actually bridge the gap between web development and blockchain development. So it's not so much about the existing ecosystem, maybe like on order of 10,000 developers that we have in the Ethereum ecosystem today. It's actually about reaching into those JavaScript developers, 10 million JavaScript developers. Like our goal is to pick any random JavaScript developer from the street, and they can build blockchain application within like minutes or hours. So to that end, we support TypeScript, which is a flavor of JavaScript for like open web applications, for applications that do not deal with as much of financial value at stake. And then when it comes to like more financial applications, we support Rust. So Rust is a kind of like next generation of C++. We have in-house kind of like experts, so to speak, who learned Rust. And so when projects building on Near, who build financial applications, we pair them up with those people. And we think we have pretty good competency in Rust and also can basically get people up to speed on Rust very quickly. But today, Rust community is very small in the world. And then another thing to mention here, so the way we think is that developers should not think about infrastructure. We think that in the next 2-3 years, there will be kind of like convergence on 2 different standards. One standard being application chains, and that's like kind of like Polkadot, Cosmos approach, a couple other projects focus on this approach where you basically need to think a lot about infrastructure. It has implications on development experience, governance, security, like all kinds of things. Or the other approach, our approach is actually you just focus on application layer. And then infrastructure is kind of covered by us. It gives you less control over what you, oops. I think I messed it up, sorry. So it gives you less control over what you're building if you do like depths and charts kind of approach, but it also allows you to not think about economics, governance, security of a lot larger surface area, and things like that. So in terms of development experience, we also benchmark Web 2 backends. So like Firebase, Parse, we're very close to the founder of Parse. I'm kind of constantly talking about how to make it web developer friendly as opposed to blockchain developer friendly, which is not that developer friendly today at least. So that's how our studio looks. It's basically integrated development environments where people usually start. With one click, they can deploy applications, test applications, share the code with each other. And there is a TypeScript there in ID. There is also front-end code like React that people have all in one place. Usually it's not tool of choice for people, but to get started for demo purposes is actually a really good starting point. That's our ID. It's near.dev if you want to check it out. This is our Explorer, so we're also building internally Explorer that will allow for people to have a lot of access to data of applications built on Near. Now, usability of the end users, the goal here is to make sure like my mom can use blockchain applications, I can use blockchain applications. Like very ironic that we have a team of like 27 people in San Francisco focusing on blockchain space and maybe like 1 uses blockchain applications today. So that kind of like speaks to the level of penetration of blockchain applications today, which is like not that much in the world. And so how we do it is there are a couple different approaches. So one is onboarding is key. So we know that onboarding has a really high drop-off rates today. So for example, like MetaMask has like 94% drop-off rates. Some of the gaming applications and exchanges that we're in contact with have like 99% drop-off rates. And so we have this notion of progressive security, and Ethereum ecosystem coming to the same realization is that you can start with something a lot more usable, less secure, but as long as you have an option to later move into something less usable, more secure for advanced users, or for people who actually have a lot of value locked into blockchain, that's actually preferred because then you'll have a lot better onboarding, maybe like 10x improvement on onboarding. You also want to abstract away blockchain from end users, so they should not be thinking about transactions or paying for gas. Public-private keys should be hidden, seed phrases should be hidden, and also you want to have contract-based accounts, meaning that you'll have a lot more control, a lot more functionality over your account and what you can do with your account. And kind of like in the future, I think digital wallet will really become a new home screen and will be a whole more lot functional versus the wallets that we know today. That's kind of like our wallet today. And then lastly, scalability. So once we get users, once we get developers, then you actually scale. And so our team is kind of like well positioned to address it. By now, our sharding spec is fully finalized. We figured out a bunch of complex problems associated with sharded blockchains, such as data availability, data validity, adaptive shard corruption. We actually borrowed some ideas from other teams. So something to note here is that we've interviewed 30 projects since January of this year. We put a bunch of these interviews online. And we actually borrowed some ideas as well. So for example, we took some ideas from Polkadot on how they approach data availability. And super open, it's open source space and very collaborative on that front. And so the idea here is that as soon as you get demand, you can add shards as needed. When we launch, we're probably going to have 1 or 2 shards. And then as soon as we start getting demand, we're going to start adding shards. So now, what we've done on go-to-market. Go-to-market is like one-man team. It's basically me. So first of all, we raised very decentralized round. And why is it important in the context of go-to-market is because then we went very aggressively after all of our investor network. So what I did, I mapped all of the projects in space, mainly Ethereum projects. I mapped, kind of like prioritized them against each other. I mapped who are founders in each one of those projects. I mapped how our investors connected to them. And every week I basically was asking people for introductions. And so through that we got connected to 75 projects in space. I think 15 of them will become our customers over the next year. And then what's important also, what's super exciting is that alongside with our fundraise, which was also kind of like DIY PR initiative, we got also applications through inbound. So we opened up the program, the call to action to on our PR release announcing funding was, you can work with us as long as you build on year. We can provide a lot of engineering support, a lot of business support. Business support has to do with go-to-market strategy and thinking about like market-first approach, which is kind of like lacking in the blockchain space today, as well as introductions to investors for the projects that are ready for that, as well as some upside via near tokens as well. And so here are some examples of our early customers. Stardust, it's basically I helped them fundraise their first round. They got like $250,000 from Blockchain Capital recently through our introductions, through our due diligence, helping them. The founder of this company works out of our office, so we actually go like above and beyond for our first customers. And so they're building a store for traditional, not blockchain gaming. So he would approach traditional game studios and basically find specific ones that have A, pretty good engagement, but B, not as good monetization. And so he would offer them opportunity to actually monetize things better. And so we're going to start basically onboarding his customers onto Near in November. That's kind of like a goal right now. And another example is a company called Flux. This is guys based in Germany. And so they're building prediction markets. So over the course of last year, they've been trying to build prediction market on top of 0x and on top of Ethereum. One of them led to some struggles around scalability. Another one, when they tried to use 0x, led to some hurdles around regulatory frameworks in Germany. And so they actually like really struggled for a year with fundraise. And so the natural kind of path forward for them was to actually scratch that and build on Near from kind of like day one. We also kind of went above and beyond for them. So I introduced them to 90 investors. We set up 20 meetings in San Francisco for them last week. I did a bunch of back channeling. So when you meet investors in San Francisco, they usually don't tell you candid feedback up front. They say you nice things. And so it was on me then to actually meet up with a bunch of them after that and dig actual feedback and provide it back to the team because it's kind of like a learning experience. And we also are basically close to securing $1 million round for them. Because again, the kind of like the theme here across this company or across Stardust, a bunch of our other customers, is that there's a lot of struggle associated with fundraising today for the blockchain applications. So investors, at least in Silicon Valley, are kind of like well invested in the infrastructure space and kind of put their bets there. When it comes to application space, they're very hesitant. So the kind of common approach is like, well, I'm going to sit on sidelines and wait and hang out. And if you have attraction, we can talk. So like right now we can build relationship, but like come back when you have attraction. Especially blockchain gaming projects are struggling with fundraisers because not only gaming is a heat-driven business, but also there is no audience today in the blockchain space. Like relatively speaking, there is only speculative audience that exists across DeFi and gaming applications, and there's no mass market that actually uses those applications. And so we like go above and beyond for these early customers because fundraise is the first hurdle for them. As soon as they secure funding, they can start building, they can start going to market. We're also building some reference applications in-house. So we're building CryptoCorgis. We're up for, if you have any feedback in terms of functionality, what you want CryptoCorgis to do, please let us know. We'll build it. That's like one of the active projects right now. The evolution of this project was that a bunch of our engineers were building a bunch of side projects at Near. So they would build Near while also at nighttime building applications on top of Near. And our engineers being like blockchain, kind of like backend engineers, they did not have much polish and like front end. And so at some point we converged on this idea of like, let's scratch all of this like 8 apps that we have internally that are not presentable. And like, let's just build one that's kind of nice and use it as a reference app. So if you have any ideas what to do with this, we're open for feedback. Feel free to join our Discord chat and let us know. And so now going forward, like 2019, the end of this year and beyond, I think it's about figuring out what requires for mass adoption. Mass adoption of blockchain space is not there today, but there are ways to get there, I think. So for us, the road to mainnet, which we want to release end of the year, is actually stability. So a lot of it will open up the validator incentivized testnet very soon. We are testing it through our early customers, stability, because the spec is fully finalized. We know exactly what our tech can do. Now it's just to make sure that it actually doesn't fall down. And so that's like stability. Then we're going to release Stake Wars in maybe 2-3 weeks from now and have a push towards working with validators. The goal there is to achieve high degree of decentralization. That's kind of like the main goal. And then launch mainnet by the end of the year with 20 or 30 apps on top of Near. And then now we're kind of splitting company into two. So there is an Inc. associated with technology and building the protocol and improving the protocol. And then there is also a foundation in Switzerland. And so the foundation goals are to actually fundraise into the foundation, launch an auction after the mainnet, and some of it will have to do with distributing tokens as fairly as possible and into as many hands as possible. We have pretty challenging kind of goal in front of us. We need to distribute like 70% of our tokens, and that's like, I think I view personally as like the biggest challenge, like figuring out that part. Increasing the reach of our ambassadors. We have ambassadors in 17 countries. Have 0 in Korea. So if you know somebody who wants to be ambassador for Near, and what it entails is actually doing a lot of developer meetups. So that's kind of like ambassador program we have, and really want to push that up front. Potentially consider starting incubator as well, given that we do a bunch of it already informally. And so now how to get to decentralized web at scale? We kind of really focus on decentralized web internally. So first of all is to make sure that web developers can actually build on blockchain. Second of all is then going past their reservations today. When I talk to my friends in San Francisco, a bunch of my friends are web developers. They have a lot of reservations about joining the blockchain space. The first biggest reservation, what they tell me, is that speculation is very repulsive to us. I think there are a bunch of greedy people in the blockchain space. I don't want to deal with this. Let's talk in a couple of years. I don't understand the space. If we go past this reservation, if some people say like, oh, sure, like maybe I don't care about speculation, they look at the existing applications today and they're like, okay, this is toy apps. Why there are only joke toy apps that exist? Like I built like real experiences, and what you're showing me is a toy. It's not interesting. Again, come back in a year and we'll talk again. And so the big kind of push for us internally is figure out how to actually build a narrative and really good way to actually bring those web developers into the blockchain ecosystem. And some of it has to do with making sure that the tooling is really good. They can actually build stuff within minutes or within hours. Some of it is they can actually acquire users, and some of it is they can actually build business models for sustainable blockchain development. That also doesn't exist today. We actually think that models, business models can come from Asia. Asia innovated a lot more than US when it comes to business models for Web 2, because Asia leapfrogged US directly to the mobile. Mobile has a lot less efficient advertising, And so now you have a situation where in US, there are a couple of boring models that exist, such as ad-based model, subscription model. And in Asia, you have a lot of experimentation and a lot of interesting business models. Like if you look at distribution of revenue of Tencent, for example, the share of advertisement is like 20% only. And then, oops. Sorry. What? Yeah, so it could be better monetization of creators. So creators don't monetize well in US. So for example, like in US, there is a model called Patreon, right? It's actually not a very efficient model. So like we talked to the guy who built Homebrew, so the software that's used by millions of developers. And so 90% of Google engineers use his software. And I'm talking to the guy, and he's like, I would love to work on this full time. I only need $30,000 to survive. I actually live in Georgia with my wife. We don't have that much to live off. But actually was not able to support myself with that. So he has millions of users. Developers are his users, people who have money. And he's able to only get $600 per month from Patreon. And so his wife forced him to go and find a job. And so we think that this doesn't make any sense. That's just one creator. I mean, like developer is a creator. There are other kinds of creators that are also not getting paid. And so in Asia, on the other hand, there are a lot of models, business models associated with monetization, a lot more direct monetization of creators. That's one example. So, or people would consume books, for example. They would get free book. They would read 2/3 of the book for free, and then they'll have to purchase it, for example. So those models don't exist in the US. But then for the users, like the questions like how to get users to the blockchain, I do think it's all about usability and also utility and functionality. And not kind of like trying to tell them like, oh, blockchain is cool. It's actually about hiding blockchain, but providing the usability that doesn't exist today. Which brings me to the last slide. Like what we kind of care about, ethos of our team, is open web. And so the idea of open web is that whoever controls the data today controls what can be done with this data. And so if you have Facebook on your mobile phone, they actually have access to all of your other applications, and they track the usage across applications, across all of the devices. Applications that get a lot of usage, they basically go after them. They put the team to go after this company. And it's very, very challenging today to start new consumer web companies because the data is controlled by 5 giants. So now what companies do with this data, like I personally as a BD person thinking a lot about connecting people and social graphs, I think a lot about social graphs. What I can do with my social graph is actually a lot, but my social graphs are controlled by Facebook and LinkedIn. And so Facebook monetizes social graph through advertisement, LinkedIn monetizes social graph through enterprise software sales. And so if there is an app that provides me a lot of value through my social graph or social graph of our investors or social graph of my friends that I don't use every day, this app would actually not exist in this world. So Facebook will make a conscious decision not to build this app because I would use this app like once a month or something like that, as opposed to clicking a lot on an app and generate the ad dollars. And so my point here is that the data, basically whoever controls the data decides what applications gets to be built. And so there are millions of applications that do not exist today because they're not aligned with business models of people who do control the data. And I can come up with like endless examples on that front, but a bunch of our engineers in our team have a lot more. And so then the idea of open web is that platform rules will no longer be changed on developers or entrepreneurs or users. So there will be basically a rise in digital property rights. So this year, for example, one of the platforms that changed rules on people is Medium. Last year, it was Facebook. And those rules basically continuously change on users, on developers, on entrepreneurs. And they do not have any control over what happens. And the whole notion of like APIs and control to data is the notion of one entity telling basically other people what to do with data and what can they do. It becomes more and more restrictive every year. And so the world of the future is the world in which people will have a choice actually whether they want to subscribe to those rules or whether they want to move out of this. And so the platforms will be decentralized. As a result, they will be open. But the big question is how to get there. What's the day one of this? What's the year one of this? As opposed to kind of like like we know the long-term vision and it's very bright, but how to get there is a challenge still. And so another thing to mention here, last thing to mention here, is that we do think that there will be products and primitives that will exist that will actually talk to each other. So the notion of open web is the notion of partially open state of applications. So not only applications are built in open source in mind, but they also have partially open state. As a result, they actually exchange data between each other. And so now you'll have, for example, blog as an application and social graph as a primitive. And because they both exist, both of them actually improve as products. So blog can have information from social graph that tells you who are actually writers out of your friends. Or social graph has, or your profile has direct access to your blog. And so your profile increases. And so that's kind of like how we think about like open web and what it can do. And we're like actively figuring out how to make it less abstract and more concrete and kind of put together a bunch of hackathons to inspire people to actually build those things. So that's in a nutshell like Near protocol and what we're all about.